Before we jump into this crazy story, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing just how far these wild Karen tales of chaos and karma can reach. The morning sun spilled over the lake, turning the rippling water into a sheet of molten gold. The scent of pine and damp earth filled the air, mingling with the faint tang of metal from the solar panels mounted on the cabin roof. A gentle breeze carried the distant hum of insects, but there was something unsettling in the rhythm of the day. It wasn't the serenity one expected at a secluded lakeside retreat. No, this morning carried tension. Jason, a 39-year-old man with a practical mind and a streak of stubbornness, stood barefoot on the muddy yard, surveying the scene before him. His turquoise t-shirt clung slightly to his skin in the early heat, and white shorts were already smeared with streaks of dirt from his hurried inspection. At first glance, it might have looked like a simple morning chore, checking the solar array, making sure the panels were clear of debris, inspecting the Tesla parked too close to his cabin. But it wasn't ordinary. The red Tesla was plugged in again, its sleek frame gleaming beneath a thin layer of mud and leaves, the charging cable stretching arrogantly from his solar system to the car. And standing beside the car were two women whose presence made Jason's jaw tighten instantly. Patricia, slightly taller with a floral summer dress now spotted with mud, and Cheryl, in striped t-shirt and denim shorts. Each bore that exact expression Jason had come to dread: smug, entitled, entirely unbothered by the audacity of their actions. Both women, 44 years old and comfortably confident in their ability to ignore other people's boundaries, were laughing and gesturing at the car, oblivious to the effect they had on him. Jason had learned the hard way that these two sisters were a force of nature, the type who believed the world existed solely for their convenience. They had been sneaking their Tesla into his solar grid for weeks, charging it at his cabin without so much as a please or a thank you, as if the energy he painstakingly stored and managed had no owner at all. Seriously? Again, Jason muttered under his breath, striding across the mud-slicked grass with purpose. The sisters barely noticed him, caught up in some trivial argument over which side of the car they should stand to get a better angle for selfies. Patricia caught sight of him first, waving a hand lazily as if shooing a stray animal. "Oh, Jason." "Morning." Her voice was saccharine, mocking, the kind that could make anyone's stomach twist. "We just needed a quick top-up. Your solar setup is so generous, isn't it?" Generous. Jason's teeth ground together. He forced a smile that was more rigid than anything friendly. "You've been using my solar power for nearly 2 hours every day this week. That's not a quick top-up. That's," he gestured at the cable stretching from his panels to their car, "taking what isn't yours." Cheryl rolled her eyes dramatically, tossing a strand of damp hair over her shoulder. "Oh, come on. It's just a little electricity. What's the big deal? We're helping the environment, right?" Jason exhaled, trying to keep the color from rising in his face. Helping the environment doesn't mean stealing. And it doesn't mean ignoring the fact that it's feeding your car instead of the systems it's supposed to support. For a fraction of a second, their laughter faltered. Then Patricia shrugged, brushing mud from her dress. "Systems? Honey, it's just a cabin. What are you talking about?" Jason clenched his fists, resisting the urge to point at the panels or snatch the cord. Patience had been his shield for weeks, but the shield was denting. The solar grid runs the septic pump. Everything depends on it functioning properly. You're literally using energy meant for the cabin's essentials to charge a car you don't even own. Cheryl's response was a high-pitched laugh that grated against his nerves. "Oh, please. The cabin's fine. We just need juice. And your system is huge, like practically endless." Jason's heart thumped faster, the irritation bubbling into something sharper, almost like a storm about to break. Endless? Not even close. His solar system was meticulously calculated, designed to sustain his cabin through long stretches of remote isolation, not to power a pair of luxury cars for entitled sisters with a sense of ownership over nothing. He stepped closer, narrowing the distance between himself and the Tesla. The cable hummed faintly, a reminder of the energy being siphoned. "It's not endless. Every kilowatt you pull is a kilowatt I can't use. Every time this happens, it risks damaging the system, and it's putting me in a position where I have to check the battery constantly. Do you understand that?" Patricia tilted her head, faux innocent, and gave a small laugh. "We understand that you're intense about your solar. But really, we're not doing anything wrong. You can't even see the juice leaving your panels." Jason felt a mix of frustration and disbelief. "I can see it, I can measure it, and I can tell you that what you're doing is ridiculous." Cheryl took a step closer to the Tesla, glancing down at the charging indicator, then smirked. "Ridiculous? Maybe. But you're letting it happen, so I guess it's all okay." Jason's mind raced. He knew a polite request wouldn't work, and scolding them would only earn eye rolls and more entitlement. His logical side argued for a calm confrontation, but his instinct, the one that had survived years of dealing with chaos and entitlement, whispered that it was time to get creative. He backed up a few steps and took a slow breath, letting his eyes scan the sisters and the cable. Something in him clicked. The absurdity of the situation presented an opportunity. If they thought they were clever, if they thought they could keep using his solar power without consequence, then he could turn that arrogance against them. But that was later. First, he needed to ensure they didn't leave without acknowledging the problem. "So here's the thing," Jason said carefully, keeping his tone neutral, almost conversational despite the storm behind his eyes. "If you want to keep using my solar power, we need rules. Or, well, you stop using it. Either way, you can't just keep plugging in without asking." Patricia tilted her head, as if considering this as one might a minor inconvenience. "Rules? Oh, Jason, rules are so boring. We're just here for a few minutes. Don't make this complicated." Cheryl crossed her arms, mud smudging the sleeves of her t-shirt, and added with a sharp laugh, "Yeah, rules are rules. Who even cares?" Jason's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to stay composed. He had learned that anger, while satisfying, wasn't effective against people like them. They thrived on it. Instead, he shifted his weight, making sure he was visible in the sunlight. The camera-like way his stance framed him almost cinematic, without him even thinking about it. Care enough to know that what you're doing could ruin your car or the cabin systems, or that it's technically theft. For a moment, the sisters paused. Cheryl looked at the cable, Patricia at the panels, and Jason thought he saw a flicker of unease cross their faces. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the confidence that only arrogance can create. "You're dramatic," Patricia said, brushing mud from her hands. "It's just a Tesla. It can handle a few extra kilowatts." Jason's pulse thudded in his ears, his mind spinning through possibilities. Confrontation was clearly useless. Threats were useless. Any direct approach would only lead to laughs, eye rolls, and yet another day of him monitoring energy usage like a warden. He allowed a thin, measured smile to slip onto his face, hiding the rapid calculations in his head. "Fine," he said slowly, letting the word hang. "If that's your attitude, then I guess we'll see what happens when things go a little differently." Patricia raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. Cheryl tilted her head, curiosity flickering behind the smirk. Neither of them had any idea what Jason meant. The audacity, the arrogance, the absolute entitlement of these sisters had left them blind to the possibility that someone could outsmart them. Jason turned toward the cabin, brushing mud from his shorts, pretending to check something inside. The sisters followed lazily, laughing among themselves, confident that the day would proceed as usual. But he didn't glance back. His mind was already moving ahead, tracing the lines of the solar grid, the path of electricity, the systems that depended on it, and the perfect way to use their arrogance against them. As the sisters began fiddling with the Tesla again, Jason's smile widened slightly, a silent acknowledgement that the first move had been made. They thought they were untouchable, that their entitlement had no consequences. They didn't know that the storm was already building. A faint hum from the solar system reminded him that the energy was flowing, and the opportunity was set. The cabin remained peaceful, serene, untouched by the chaos to come, but Jason could feel the tension stretching, a taut wire ready to snap. And when it did, the results would be spectacular. For now, the sisters laughed, oblivious to the plan forming just steps away. But the first stage was complete. The protagonist had acknowledged the problem, gauged the villains, and begun to play his hand. The sun rose higher over the lake, shimmering on the water, glinting off the solar panels, and casting long shadows across the muddy yard. It was the calm before the storm, the moment before the rules of nature and human cleverness would intervene. Jason's eyes met the Tesla's glossy red hood, still smeared with mud from a previous encounter, and he knew patience, precision, and a touch of irony would make this a day they would never forget. The sisters were confident, loud, and entirely unaware, and that was exactly how it had to be. He took another step, letting the tension build naturally, knowing that the first confrontation had ended, but the real game was only just beginning. And in that golden light, with the lake shimmering quietly behind the cabin, Jason allowed himself a small, controlled smirk. The Karen sisters had no idea what was coming. Jason spent the next few days observing the cabin's solar system with a meticulous eye, noting every fluctuation in voltage, every spike in current, and every subtle hum that indicated energy flow. The Tesla had returned each morning, Patricia and Cheryl laughing, as if they owned the place, their confidence unshakable. He followed the pattern of their arrivals, how they unplugged and replugged, how they lingered near the car, oblivious to the way the energy from his carefully balanced solar array was being siphoned. Each observation fueled a plan, and his mind buzzed with anticipation. He started small, redirecting minor portions of power to non-critical systems, testing the reaction. A gentle diversion to cabin lighting caused no real harm, but made him feel a sense of control. Every day the sisters plugged in, Jason monitored the Tesla's charge, noting the peaks in energy draw. His grin widened each time they thought the system was endless, each time their arrogance blinded them to the consequences of their actions. He imagined a perfect irony, one that would hit them where it hurt without putting himself at risk. Patricia and Cheryl continued their daily routine with an air of entitlement that bordered on theatrical. Patricia would fuss over the car's touchscreen, tapping the charge icons repeatedly, as if that somehow demanded more energy. Cheryl would hover nearby, flipping through her phone, taking photos of the Tesla's hood smeared with mud from the lake trail, laughing at every smudge as though the mess added to the car's charm. Jason watched from the cabin's porch, his camera resting on a tripod, ready to capture the unfolding chaos. He didn't want mere revenge. He wanted a story that would illustrate precisely how foolish arrogance could be. He began by studying the flow of energy through the solar grid, mapping every panel, every junction, every inverter. He noted how much energy was required to charge the Tesla, how quickly it depleted the reserves, and how it could be subtly rerouted without triggering an immediate system alert. It required careful planning, too abrupt, and the sisters would notice. Too subtle, and the impact would be minimal. Precision was key. The first opportunity presented itself midweek. The sisters arrived at their usual hour, chattering and laughing, oblivious to the faint smell of mud and wet pine needles that clung to their clothes. Patricia plugged in the Tesla with a flourish, pressing the touchscreen like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. Cheryl leaned against the car, arms crossed, checking her phone, completely unaware of the careful monitoring Jason had set up. He activated a small diversion, rerouting a portion of the solar power to a secondary line that fed a less noticeable but essential system, one that would later serve as the perfect setup for a shock. The sisters didn't notice. They never did. The subtle hum of redirected energy passed beneath their notice, but Jason noted the minute change in draw on his monitoring system. He smiled, imagining their confusion when the effects became visible. Patricia hummed happily as the Tesla's charging icon blinked steadily, oblivious to the fact that the energy they assumed was fueling their car was beginning to serve an entirely different purpose. Cheryl, meanwhile, was scrolling through pictures of the muddy Tesla, making small quips about how the mud made it look rugged and adventurous. Jason's grin widened. Their arrogance was their weakness, and their ignorance was the weapon he would wield. He spent the next few days carefully adjusting the system, introducing minor diversions, and testing the sisters' patience. Each day they arrived, each day they assumed entitlement would protect them. Jason refined his strategy. He started thinking of ways to make the final payoff both dramatic and inescapable. The trick would be to combine spectacle with logic, chaos with precision. If done correctly, it would be a perfect lesson in humility, served with cinematic flair. By the end of the week, Jason was ready. The sisters arrived under the pretense of their usual energy top-up, chatting about their plans for the weekend, completely unaware that the carefully laid web was about to ensnare them. Patricia plugged in the Tesla with practiced ease, grumbling about how slow the charge seemed, while Cheryl leaned over the hood, checking the weather app on her phone. Jason observed quietly, his fingers tracing the screen of his monitoring device. The solar grid hummed, energy flowing, diversion lines active, everything set. The plan hinged on timing. The energy rerouting had to reach a critical point just as the sisters believed they were fully in control. Jason had connected a discrete line to the septic system's pump, calibrated to trigger when the Tesla drew a specific amount of power. The timing had to be perfect, too early, and the sisters might notice irregularities. Too late, and the visual impact would be diminished. He adjusted the settings, heart pounding with anticipation, the thrill of a carefully executed plan electrifying his thoughts. Patricia leaned back, folding her arms, a self-satisfied smile on her mud-smeared face. "See, Cheryl? Nothing can stop this baby. Your solar system here is basically a miracle." Cheryl laughed, pointing at the touchscreen. "Miracle or not, it's ours for now. Who cares about rules when you have free power?" Their confidence was intoxicating to watch, a dangerous kind of arrogance that made Jason's pulse quicken. He took a few steps back, camera in hand, framing the shot as if he were already directing a short film. The sisters' movements were theatrical. The way Patricia waved her hands at the charging icon, the way Cheryl leaned over the hood, the careless confidence in every gesture. Everything about them screamed entitlement, and Jason intended to capture it all for maximum effect. The first subtle signs of the diversion began almost imperceptibly. The pump that serviced the septic system activated quietly, humming beneath the cabin without any immediate visible effect. Patricia frowned at the Tesla's charging icon, muttering, "Why is it taking so long? It should be done by now." Cheryl waved her off. "Relax, it's fine. Probably just a glitch. Your car's battery is big. It can handle a slow day." Jason bit back a laugh, savoring the first crack in their armor of certainty. Over the next hour, the diversion intensified, the flow of power increasingly redirected to the septic system. The sisters remained unaware, absorbed in their own chatter, their laughter echoing across the lake. Jason, crouched behind the cabin porch railing, kept his camera focused, documenting every reaction, every unaware gesture. He imagined the moment of revelation, the crescendo of shock that would make their arrogance shatter in an instant. By mid-afternoon, the first consequences became undeniable. Small splashes and muffled gurgles rose from the septic line, but nothing catastrophic, just enough to create unease. Patricia tapped the touchscreen again, frustration beginning to creep into her voice. "This doesn't make sense. Why isn't it full yet?" Cheryl peered at the hood, worry flickering in her expression, but neither connected the dots. Jason's smirk widened. Patience was everything. The full effect would come soon enough. He took a step closer, adjusting the camera angle to capture the sisters' expressions. Every small frown, every confused glance, was fuel to his anticipation. Their ignorance made the unfolding scenario not only satisfying, but inevitable. He reminded himself to stay calm, to let the system do the work, and to ensure that every element of his plan proceeded flawlessly. By late afternoon, the setup was complete. The solar diversion had reached its maximum, the septic system humming quietly beneath the cabin, and the Tesla still charging as though nothing were wrong. The sisters, still laughing, still absorbed in their entitlement, were on the brink of realizing that something was amiss, but not yet. The suspense hung in the air, thick and palpable, as Jason moved silently behind his camera, ready to capture every detail of the impending chaos. He reviewed the system one final time, checking every wire, every inverter, every subtle adjustment he had made. Everything aligned perfectly. The Tesla was now drawing energy that would, within minutes, make the absurdity of their behavior undeniable. The sisters' faces were already beginning to show tiny signs of doubt, flickers of confusion, but they were too far gone in their arrogance to notice the larger truth. Jason allowed himself a small, controlled breath, savoring the tension. This was the moment before the storm, the pause that precedes revelation. The sisters were blissfully unaware, wrapped up in the comfort of their entitlement, laughing and chatting as if they owned the cabin, the Tesla, and the very sunlight itself. Patricia tapped the touchscreen one last time, muttering, "Something's weird, maybe it's the car." Cheryl leaned over the hood, frowning. "Yeah, it's acting slow. But it's fine, right?" "Right." Jason's eyes glimmered with anticipation. Soon, their confidence would crumble, and the results of their arrogance would unfold spectacularly, captured in perfect cinematic detail. He stepped back, adjusting the camera one more time. Every element was in place. The muddy yard, the red Tesla, the sisters' oblivious arrogance, the humming solar grid, the quietly working septic pump. The stage was set, the players in position, and the audience, should they witness this in real time, would be treated to a lesson in entitlement, arrogance, and karma delivered with precision. The wind rustled the pine branches above, carrying the faint scent of wet earth, the calm before the chaos. Jason allowed a brief, satisfied smirk to slip across his face. The sisters had no idea what was coming, and by the time they realized, it would be too late. Every carefully calculated diversion, every subtle reroute of energy, every small detail had been orchestrated for maximum effect. As the late afternoon sun glinted off the cabin roof, Jason leaned against the railing, the camera focused, the Tesla still charging, Patricia and Cheryl still absorbed in their obliviousness. The tension in the air was nearly tangible, a taut line ready to snap. And when it did, the spectacle would be perfect, chaotic, humiliating, and utterly deserved. Jason's mind raced with possibilities for the reveal, imagining the sisters' faces as they discovered what their arrogance had wrought. He allowed himself one final glance at the Tesla, its red paint streaked with mud, a silent witness to every misstep, every ignorant assumption. The countdown had begun. In mere moments, the carefully orchestrated balance would tip, and the results would be cinematic in scope, dramatic in impact, and complete in karmic satisfaction. The sisters, still chattering, still unaware, had unknowingly sealed their own fate. And as Jason adjusted the lens on his camera, capturing the sun glinting off the wet hood, he knew the next moments would be unforgettable, both for them and for him. The first stage was complete, the plan in motion, and the suspense hung thickly, promising chaos, comedy, and ultimate reckoning. The sun had begun its descent, painting the lake in streaks of orange and gold, when Jason pressed the final switch that would bring his plan to life. He had spent days orchestrating every detail, carefully calibrating the solar diversion to feed the septic system, while the Tesla remained blissfully unaware of the chaos to come. Patricia and Cheryl, 44 and wholly confident in their entitlement, had no idea that the arrogance that fueled their laughter would be the very force that ensnared them. The sisters approached the Tesla as usual, still arguing over which side of the hood was muddier, which streak of red paint was more dramatic. Mud clung to their clothes in thick, wet layers, evidence of their recent escapades along the cabin's trail. Patricia adjusted her floral dress, smearing fresh streaks across her legs, while Cheryl, arms crossed, flicked mud from her denim shorts, as though it were a badge of honor. Jason, standing at a safe distance behind his tripod, felt a familiar surge of anticipation that came with seeing the first signs of impending chaos. "Ready for another charge?" Patricia asked, sliding the cable into the Tesla's port. Her voice was light, mocking, the same confidence that had carried her through weeks of exploiting Jason's solar system. Cheryl leaned on the hood, smirking, scrolling through photos on her phone, still unaware that the tide was about to turn. Jason's finger hovered over the last adjustment on the solar controller, the diversion set to peak at exactly the right moment. He could almost feel the tension in the air, thick and electric. One misstep could ruin the perfect timing, but everything was aligned. The hum of the solar array was a steady, almost taunting background, a subtle promise that the energy was flowing, just not where the sisters thought it was going. Minutes passed. The Tesla's charge icon blinked steadily, seeming normal. But beneath the surface, power was rerouted, filling the septic system, pumping energy into a line Patricia and Cheryl had never imagined. The sisters chatted and laughed, oblivious to the subtle vibrations beneath their feet, the faint gurgles from the hidden pump that would soon erupt into chaos. Jason adjusted the camera lens, making sure he captured every angle. The muddy yard, the struggling sisters, the red Tesla gleaming under a coat of mud, the cabin standing quietly in the background. Patricia frowned at the touchscreen. Why is it taking so long to charge? That doesn't make sense. It should be done by now. Her tone was more sharp than playful, a crack in the confident mask she wore so easily. Cheryl leaned over, inspecting the hood, tapping it lightly with her fingers. Maybe it's just slow? I don't know. The battery's huge. Don't panic. Jason's lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. The first tiny fractures in their certainty were appearing, though they had no idea how vast the chasm was that lay ahead. He pressed the final button, a subtle redirect that would allow the energy to peak into the septic system. What had been just a background hum now intensified, a crescendo building beneath the cabin. And then it began. A sudden, sharp gurgle erupted from the septic line, followed by a wet splash that echoed across the yard. The sisters froze, their eyes widening in unison. Mud and water suddenly surged from the pump, spilling upward in chaotic arcs, splattering onto the Tesla's hood and roof. The very energy they thought they were drawing now turned against them in spectacular fashion. Patricia shrieked, stepping back, her floral dress drenched and smeared with sludge. Cheryl stumbled, flinging herself against the hood, hands pressed to her chest as the mess coated her striped t-shirt and denim shorts. Jason couldn't contain a laugh, though he maintained his distance, camera rolling. He had anticipated every movement, every reaction, but the real-time chaos exceeded even his expectations. Mud clung to the Tesla in thick layers, dripping from the roof, hood, and windows, obscuring the red paint but leaving streaks of it visible, like a ruined masterpiece. The sisters screamed, slipping slightly in the muck, trying to pull the hose from the charging station, completely unaware that every ounce of energy they had arrogantly stolen was fueling the chaos beneath them. "This isn't what is happening," Patricia yelled, spinning in place, her voice sharp with panic. She tried to yank the cable out, but the Tesla's plug had locked, a final touch Jason had left in place weeks earlier. Cheryl's phone fell into the mud, forgotten, as she clutched the hood in disbelief. "Why is this disgusting? Stop it. Jason. Jason." Jason stepped closer, still filming, keeping a careful balance between capturing every detail and staying safe from the mud explosion. "Looks like your Tesla's drawing a bit more than you bargained for," he called out, smirking. "Funny how electricity can be diverted." The sisters turned simultaneously, mud dripping from every angle, eyes wild, mouths agape. Their arrogance was gone, replaced with panic and confusion. The red Tesla, once the symbol of entitlement and control, was now nothing more than a mud-covered, helpless machine. The charging screen blinked uselessly, the energy once powering their sense of superiority now fueling the septic pump with precision, and the gurgling, sloshing chaos was undeniable. Patricia lunged at the hose, trying to disconnect it, but her grip slipped in the slick mud. Cheryl reached for the screen again, tapping frantically, but the system remained locked. Their combined panic only made the scene more cinematic, more chaotic, a perfect illustration of the consequences of arrogance. Jason's camera captured every flail, every shout, every exasperated glance. You did this." Cheryl finally managed, mud dripping from her arms. Her voice was sharp, trembling between rage and shock. Patricia echoed her sentiment, shrieking at Jason, their entitlement finally meeting reality head-on. "This is insane. How could you?" This was our car." Jason adjusted his tripod, keeping a steady hand. "Your car? You mean the one you've been stealing energy from? Funny, isn't it, how things come full circle?" He took a step closer, letting the sisters' realization sink in fully. The humor in the situation didn't escape him. They had laughed at rules, at boundaries, at his warnings, and now the full, messy consequence was undeniable. The chaos intensified. Water and sludge splashed higher, coating the sisters' faces, hair, and clothes. Patricia slipped, arms flailing, and Cheryl stumbled into the Tesla, leaving mud streaks across the windshield. The red paint was barely visible beneath the grime, the Tesla reduced to an unrecognizable, comical disaster. Jason kept filming, savoring every moment, each second more satisfying than the last. Neighbors from nearby cabins began to notice the commotion, curious eyes peering over fences, some stopping to capture the spectacle themselves. Patricia and Cheryl, once confident and commanding, were now the center of public embarrassment, their screams mingling with the gurgle of the diverted energy. The spectacle was both humiliating and unforgettable, a perfect karmic payoff. Jason finally called out, walking toward the Tesla cautiously, camera still rolling. "You both seemed pretty sure this would be easy, didn't you? Funny how the universe has its own sense of humor." Patricia tried to retort, but the words caught in her throat, swallowed by mud and shock. Cheryl's glare was sharp but powerless, as the full weight of the chaos settled in. He moved around the car, documenting the mud, the sewage-fueled sprays, and the sisters' frantic attempts to regain control. Every detail was captured. The soaked floral dress clinging to Patricia, the striped t-shirt and denim shorts plastered to Cheryl, the Tesla completely smothered in sludge, the cabin in the background standing quietly, as if observing the spectacle with calm amusement. By now, the sisters had exhausted themselves, slipping, falling, and finally collapsing onto the muddy yard, hands covering their faces, breaths heaving. The Tesla, immobile and drenched, blinked uselessly, a casualty of their entitlement and arrogance. Jason lowered the camera, satisfied that the maximum effect had been achieved. The scene was chaotic, cinematic, and complete. The karma had been served, public and undeniable. Patricia finally managed a groan. I can't believe this." Cheryl echoed it, voice hoarse. Everything ruined. Their eyes met Jason's, wide with disbelief, the certainty of entitlement replaced with a stark understanding of consequence. Jason stepped back, letting the final realization sink in. Maybe next time you'll think twice before assuming you can take what isn't yours. Funny, isn't it, how electricity obeys the rules even when people don't? The sisters remained in the mud, drenched, humiliated, and thoroughly defeated. Their arrogance had been spectacularly dismantled, replaced with the messy clarity of lesson learned. The Tesla's red paint peeked out from beneath layers of sludge, like a scarlet reminder of their folly. Jason walked toward the cabin, camera still rolling, capturing the aftermath. He could feel a quiet satisfaction, the calm after the storm, the thrill of seeing entitlement meet consequence. The sisters, exhausted and humiliated, were left to process the spectacle, and the surrounding cabins had witnessed the story unfold, lending a public dimension to the chaos. As he secured the camera and checked the diverted solar system, Jason allowed himself a final smirk. The Tesla would need weeks to clean, the sisters' pride even longer to recover. But beyond the mess, the public humiliation, and the cinematic chaos, the lesson was clear: arrogance, entitlement, and disregard for boundaries had consequences. Patience, preparation, and clever strategy were rewarded. The sisters sat in silence, mud dripping from their hair and clothes, catching their breath, staring at the ruined Tesla. Jason leaned against the porch railing, watching the lake shimmer in the fading light, knowing the chaos had reached its peak. For the first time, the sisters seemed small, human, and vulnerable, a stark contrast to the confidence they had carried so blithely into his yard. And yet, as the evening settled, Jason felt the familiar thrill of anticipation. This was a climax, yes, but there was always more to observe, more to learn, and more stories waiting in the quiet corners of the cabin and the lake. The sisters had paid their price, the Tesla had suffered, and the solar system had exacted justice. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, Jason knew this was only one chapter, and the world still offered surprises, lessons, and opportunities for cleverness. He picked up his camera, brushing off the mud and debris, glancing once more at the sisters, who were now muttering to each other in disbelief, and the red Tesla, still smeared with the chaotic aftermath. The sun had set, but the story lingered in every ripple of the lake, every glint on the solar panels, every exhausted breath in the muddy yard. The stage was clear, the players humbled, and Jason's grin told the tale. Justice had been served, karma delivered, and the drama, cinematic and complete, would remain unforgettable.